right, is there a motion to come out of closed session? Okay.
Council now moves to come out of closed session and certifies that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Councilman Hill?
I move that we come out of closed session stated by the reasons by our city attorney.
Councilwoman Smith-Lee?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Cuthbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith-Lee? Aye. Councilmember Wilson-Smith? Aye. Councilmember Myers?
Aye.
Councilmember Hill?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hart?
Aye.
Mayor Pern?
Aye.
Can I please have everyone to join me for the moment of silence? Thank you. Can I please have everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Good evening again. I'd like to start off with our normal positive Petersburg story. We have a short one today. It's about Mike Jackson, the owner of the nonprofit Think, Then Choose Wisely. Mike has utilized almost 250 kids from the J.B. Stewart School to plant, till, and soon to harvest vegetables from the garden. The plan is to sell to the restaurants in Old Town. Virginia State University is developing an experimental garden with Think Then Choose Wisely and planting a berry farm as well. I'd like to thank Mr. Mike Jackson for his efforts out there at the school. Mr. Jackson, you here today?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Mr. Jackson, would you like to say a few words real quick for the work you're doing out there?
Yeah, first I'd like to thank the city.
Come to the mic.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'd like to thank y'all for acknowledging the work that we do. The Growing Petersburg Garden Project is a flagship of TTCW, and we're working with our children, taking them back to basics to understand basic healthy living and healthy eating habits, also addressing the food desert situation in that local community. There's been numerous businessmen who have stepped forward to put this project in action. Without their efforts, there's no way I could have done it. We'd like to thank Petersburg Historical Foundation, who's been terrific behind us. There are some anonymous businessmen who care to remain, but I thank them, Virginia State, Dr. Kathinji, Dr. Newsom, Jeb Stewart, Principal Ms. Johnson, and of course BB&T Bank, who stepped up this year to support us. I would like the city to please come out there, see what we're doing with the children. We ask for any volunteers, financial support, tools, whatever that you could do. We believe in these children. I got the same opportunity when I was myself a kid out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Here I am standing up in Petersburg, That's just about over 500 kids at this point right now. So please come out, volunteer, support this great work, and thank you, City, for recognizing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson. I'd also like to recognize our superintendent who's here today, Dr. Marcus Newsom. Please stand. Thank you for coming out. All right, Vice Mayor Hart.
Yes, good evening. I'd like to read the resolution, City Council of Petersburg approving the leasing financials for the police and fire vehicles. Whereas the City Council of the City of Petersburg, Virginia, has determined, one, that a true and very real need exists for certain equipment and improvement consisting of police vehicles and fire trucks for the use of the city, described in a lease agreement. Two, that the equipment is essential to the governmental functions of the city. And three, that the reasonable aspects of equipment to continue to be essential to the government functions of the city for a period not less than the term of the lease agreement as described herein. And whereas the city has made the requisite findings and filings necessary to qualify the procurement of the equipment on an emergency basis as provided under section 2.2-4300F of the Code of Virginia of 1950 and amended the code. And whereas the city proposes to enter into a lease purchase agreement in the aggregated principal amount of approximately $2.8 million, the lease agreement with First Security Finance, a division of the First Security Bancorp, to finance the purchase of a portion of the equipment over approximately 5 years and a portion of the equipment over approximately 10 years. And whereas, although the City Council will be required to include a request in its annual budget of all amounts payable to the city under the lease agreement for each successful fiscal period during the term of the lease agreement, such payments are subjected to appropriations by the City Council. The City Council is not under any obligation to make any appropriations with respect to the lease agreement. The lease agreement is not a general obligation of the city or a charge against the general credit of taxing power of the city. And the amounts payable by the city under the lease agreement do not constitute a debt of the city within the meaning of any constitutional charter and statutory limitations. I ask that we make a motion on this to purchase this equipment.
Councilman Hill.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
At this moment, I open the floor for public comments. Seeing no hands, public comments closed.
Any questions from members of council? Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Cuthbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith-Reed. Aye. Councilmember Wilson-Smith. Aye. Councilmember Myers. Aye. Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hart.
Aye.
Mayor Pern.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Councilman Hill.
Yes, I don't mean to deviate from our agenda, but I just had a question for our city manager. I called him on yesterday, and everybody, most of our residents received a drinking water notice, and I was kind of puzzled, and I had a lot of phone calls about this drinking water notice, something that I guess had happened 3 years ago, and it went out without the notification or without city council knowing about it, and I think without our management team knowing about it. So I have a real issue with this, even if it's by law that it was supposed to be done. That's what I'm hearing in rumors of the street, but things like this will cause a panic in our city like it has. So I just want some clarification on this. And sorry to kind of sidebar you, but I just told the city manager that I would be bringing this up, and I wanted to hurry up and get this out the way. So this requirements not met for the city of Petersburg waterworks thing. What is this all about?
I'm going to cover it in the city manager's report in a little bit more detail, if that's okay.
No. That'll be fine, but I kind of wanted to address it now before everybody start walking up to the mic and you know.
Have we got the slides set up? Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council. So this is a required notice on a state form that we're supposed to send out. It came up in February. We actually ran an article in the paper on March the 1st announcing that we were going to send this out. Clearly, neither I nor anybody else remembers that article, and it certainly would not alone be sufficient to notify council or the public. But I mean, this was just fundamentally an error. It percolated through the system for a month and a half, and it required a procurement action because there's a fee to send out this additional material, like a couple grand, that we had to go through. And the language in it is very stark and unfortunate, and if you don't read it very carefully, you think it's something that's current and get alarmed by that. So we have a press release that we'll send out this evening, if we haven't already sent it out, that talks to it a little more. I'm going to put a cover letter on top of this that explains what happened. It's just an error, Councilman Hill. They're going to happen from time to time. This particular one won't happen again, but it was not in bad faith or with any ill will by the people that pushed the button on the mail. They thought they were just pushing the button on something that had been long since decided that we were going to do. Point of fact is, we were required to do it, so internally, the people in utilities and billing and whatnot, they knew we had to do it. And it was our miscommunication internally that didn't get an email out to council, didn't put a cover letter on it to go out, didn't get the press release that we normally would have provided. So that part is unfortunate and regrettable on behalf of my administration. I apologize for that. Now, the important part is, of course, that we haven't missed any other testing since then. And all of the results of not just this test, but all the testing regime that we have on the water are actually quite good. The system that conveys the water through the city is in need of some maintenance and repair, but the refinement of the water that comes through the system is actually very high. So that's not what you would get. You get that in the mail, that's not the message that that's sending. And we understand that. But that is the background, that's the background for it.
All right, Councilman Hill.
Yes, I appreciate your explanation. In the future, we can't have, and you agree, this can't happen like this because it does give, what it is and this, that, and other. But we all got several phone calls behind this, and for them to put it out without consulted with the management team, without the management team letting us know, we always talk about transparency, and this wasn't a transparent act. This right here has really heightened, with everything we got going on with the water meters and all that, this was the last thing we needed. So I hope that who's ever behind this, or whoever did it, I know they probably did it in good intent, but I hope that you had a meeting with them and let them know that this can't happen again, not like this. Even if it's by law, we should know, and that's the way I feel about it, because this right here was shocking. But thank you.
It's crystal clear to the team, but I unfortunately can't unwind it. So we'll just have to make sure it doesn't happen again. get some clarity out around it today and tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize for DBA.
Councilman Cuthbert has a question.
And Mr. Mayor, to follow up on Councilman Hill's good comments, I realize that notices like this are mandatory, but I think an explanatory transmittal letter from the administration would help to put the mandatory language into context. The bottom line being, in this case, is, whoops, we forgot to do some tests, but it sure doesn't look like it makes any difference. And we could have said that, I think, in a transmittal letter and attached to it the mandatory notice, and it would have saved our citizens a lot of angst and complied with the statute at the same time.
Right,
perhaps we can proceed in that fashion
Yeah.
if we confront a similar situation.
But we'll go back and do it for this one, but certainly going forward, it shouldn't be an issue. And we've been trying to be very careful about these kinds of things in the past. So this is a bullet that we didn't dodge.
Understand, thank you.
We dodged a lot of them.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Tyrell.
The next item on the agenda, item 5, proclamations. A proclamation to observe May 2017 as Business Appreciation Month.
Whereas Governor McAuliffe has designated the entire month of May 2017 as Business Appreciation Month in Virginia. And whereas Virginia will acknowledge its existing business community and the pivotal role it plays in strengthening the Commonwealth and building the new Virginia economy in a month-long celebration. And whereas Governor Terry McAuliffe and Virginia's Secretary of Commerce and Trade, Todd Haymore, will recognize the accomplishments of our existing businesses, entrepreneurs, small minority and women-owned businesses, and the major employers that contribute greatly to Virginia's economic vitality and the well-being of our citizens. And whereas, in accordance with the state's focus, the recognition this year will include a showcase of Virginia business creation and entrepreneurial economy. And whereas, communities throughout Virginia are invited to participate in the Business Appreciation Month celebration by planning local events. And whereas the City of Petersburg is planning events throughout the month of May to acknowledge and celebrate the businesses in the City of Petersburg. Now therefore I, Samuel Parham, by virtue of the authority vested in me as Mayor of the City of Petersburg, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2017 as Business Appreciation Month in the City of Petersburg, and urge all the citizens to recognize and celebrate local businesses throughout the month and into the future. Signed by myself and the Clerk of Court, the Clerk of Council, Nikesha Jackson. Clerk. All right, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the City Council, we have members from our Economic Development Authority and also the Chamber.
In addition to May being Business Appreciation Month, this week is actually Chamber of Commerce Small Business Week. And so we've been celebrating small business like we do every day, but especially this week. And today we had an event in succession planning. So our small businesses came to meet and talk about how to make sure that the business is there for the future, not just for today. So in addition to appreciating our businesses all month, this week is Chamber of Commerce Week.
Thank you.
In addition to that, on May 23rd, we're having a Business Appreciation Day. It's going to be right here at the Union Station, and we're inviting all businesses out to come, have a meet and greet, have a social hour, where we can kind of do some positive things for Petersburg as a whole and kind of mingle and try to move things forward here. Okay.
Mr. James, what time on the 23rd?
4 to 6.
Okay, 4 to 6, May
4 to
23rd.
6, May 23rd, yes.
Right here.
Right here.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Appreciate it.
The next item on the agenda, item 6, communications and special reports. We have no items. Item 7, consent agenda. Item A, the minutes of April 18, 2017 meeting minutes. Item B, to schedule a public hearing to rezone 217 through 221 North-South Street from M1 Light Industrial to PUD Planned Unit Development with certain conditions. Item C, to schedule a public hearing to amend sections 106-132, 106-134, 106-135, 106-136, and 106-137 of the 2000 Code of the City of Petersburg to reduce the exemption from taxation via rehabilitation credit from 10 years to 5. And item D, to schedule a public hearing on a referendum to be added to the November 7, 2017 ballot regarding the election of the Petersburg City Mayor. The suggested date for all 3 public hearings is May 16, 2017.
All right, Councilman Hill.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Vice Mayor Hart.
Second.
Any questions from members of council? All right. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Cuthbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith-Lee. Aye. Councilmember Wilson-Smith. Aye. Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hart.
Aye.
Mayor Byrne.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
may I ask a question? The ad appeared in the progress index for these 3 public hearings in this morning's paper before the City Council ever voted to schedule the public hearings, which seemed a little irregular to me. And I wonder if that's the routine, to publish the notice of a public hearing before council has voted to schedule a public hearing is routine? Well, it sounds like a routine that needs to be changed.
Talk to Mr. Preston. Mr. Preston, you want to chime in on that?
In the progress index this morning was an ad saying that these public hearings would be held on May the 16th. These are public hearings that were not scheduled until the most recent motion. And it seems like maybe there's no practical significance, but it certainly had me scratching my head.
We need to get that corrected.
Thank you.
I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Item 8, official public hearings. Item 8, a public hearing on May 2nd, 2017 for the FY 17-18 all funds budget. Mr. Love.
So, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, you certainly and people that regularly attend these sessions, this is by my count about the 4th time you've seen this, but very quickly, for those that may not have had a chance, the overview is our proposed budget is $77.7 million. That includes a one-time $6 million revenue event that we would use to establish a fund balance. You can see how the major elements of the budget are public safety and social services, and a significant contribution to education as well. Next slide. Some of the policies that the council has adopted, they may all seem to be common sense, but these and the additional policies that council has adopted are very important going forward. They kind of provide the rules of the road. Number 7 is once the city manager proposes a budget, the city council can only make recommended changes to keep the budget in balance. Obviously something that we all strive for, but it is not easy to do because there are many competing needs. Next slide. So here are the revenue overview. Again, this was a zero-based budget built from the bottom up collaboratively. It was participation, as you've heard at all the work sessions about the budget by the staff. We have one work session left. I'll speak to that in a second. Here's the next slide is an overview of expenditures. This is all publicly available, and it literally was taken from the briefing that we presented earlier this year. The next slide is just a review of the embedded organization. You know, the city manager can't just change the organization without the approval of council. Stepping back to the federal days, without the approval of council. This is a streamlined organization that we spoke to earlier. I have made some interim assignments, and based on the presumption that we will approve the budget and the organization. To the extent that council does not do that, then those assignments will revert to their former roles if they're people that we currently have filling those positions. The next slide and the last one for the update. We got a ton of feedback on our leisure and cultural affairs proposal, and we unwound a couple of parts of this. If you go to the bottom, recreation program, the committee will continue to be provided by the city as it has in the past. And grounds will remain with Public Works. These, in one case, was an idea that may have been a good idea, but we didn't have the bandwidth and staff and capacity to make it work. And the other, we just discovered new information that made sense to make a change to what we had proposed earlier. So these will be spoken to in more detail at our last work session, which I think is on May the 8th. On leisure and cultural affairs, economic development planning and code enforcement, and we'll add an update on the transit department at that work session as well, just to let you know how that has come along. So that's just a quick update on the budget, kind of where we are before the public hearing commences. Questions?
Any questions from members of council?
At this moment, I open the floor for public comments. Mr. Rudolph.
Barb Rudolph, 1675 Mount Vernon Street. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm not going to come up here and make a lot of specific comments, but I wanted to recommend to you council members that you really look very long and hard at the logic of outsourcing that appears to be running throughout this proposed budget, because I'm not really sure that what the logic is or what it is consistently. I mean, we've seen certain areas, positions are being eliminated, and there's outsourcing, and then, and I'll just pick on one example. For example, the golf course, there's positions being added, to hire city staff to work at the golf course. And that's, the golf course is supposed to be self-supporting. And I wasn't sure that the golf course had totally achieved 100% self-supporting status this year. But I'm not, so there's extra money being put into that. And that would seem to me to be an area, if you were going to outsource something, that you would hire temporary or contract people to do in case it was not a moneymaker. Because once you hire city employees, it's a lot harder to displace them than it is contracted employees. So that combined with the next action on the agenda, which is to reallocate capital improvement plan money to buy equipment for the golf course, I just advise you to look very closely at the golf course issue. I'm not against the golf course, but it seems to be a very high priority in this budget. And I ask you again, as I did at the last meeting, to please get together as a group and think about what are your priorities, what's your vision. I mean, there may be a zero-based budget that's been done department by department, but what's the overall for the city? What are the priority activities and what aren't? I can see that the administration has responded to public interest in the parks and rec programs, and that's a positive. But I hope that you all will look further than that and look at what are the things that that may be outsourced and which ones may be in-house, and does that make the most sense to you financially, as well as, you know, the quality of effort and the effect on city employees and city residents. There are a few things in the budget that are not that are shown as being staffed by the city, but in some of the budget discussions, it was said that they might be privatized. I think that was in response to some questions that were asked by council members. So I encourage you to keep asking more questions to find out exactly how all these pieces fit together, rather than just getting piecemeal answers to various things. And so I'm just leaving you with the request to look at those areas and also consider what is your overarching vision for the city and how does that affect the budget priorities. Thank you.
Mr. Rue?
Good evening, members of council.
Good evening.
City manager and attorney Samuel Rue, 1952 Southwest Chester Drive. First, I want to thank the Bob Group for the transparency, the detail provided in the budget and the workshops, but I do have a few comments. I noticed one of the policies you talked about developing is collection of delinquent fees. I have a concern about revenues, and I'm thinking about real estate and personal property tax. If you look at revenues, it's about $50 million. That makes up about 70% of the budget expected revenue if you exclude the liquidity. We've got to have a policy that aggressively pursue delinquent taxes. I saw one report that had about $16 million in delinquent taxes. And my understanding, this is through 2011. So I'm not sure what is out there beyond 2011. But if we're going to make this budget, we've got to aggressively pursue fees and taxes. A case in point is on the water department. Our collection rate is 70%. The industry standard is about 90%. My understanding, each 10% is $1 million. That's $2 million. That's low-hanging fruit that's got to be addressed now. We should get that money to help with the infrastructure. The other issue that I want to bring up is the organization chart. I believe we should focus on hiring a city manager, someone who's capable, qualified, and can turn things around. But that individual that you bring in is probably going to want to develop his own organization in some way and also bring in some expertise they may have. So if you fill all these positions and bring someone in, I think you may have a difficult time for that person to operate. It may work, it may not work, but I think you need to be careful on that and focus on hiring a qualified city manager. Technology. We got to invest in technology. Technology study was done for the city of Petersburg. I participated in that, funded by the Cameron Foundation 10 years ago. And we're so far behind. We've got to fix the technology. Healthcare costs, $2.8 million, double-digit increases by annum. If we don't address the wellness issue, the chronic diseases, diabetes, blood pressure, cholesterol, you will continue to see rises in healthcare costs. Anthem should be invested wellness dollars in this community, and we should require that, because otherwise our costs will continue to rise. Outsourcing, I think you got to pay a real close attention to what you outsource. What are the cost benefit? What are the things? And all of these other departments where we're subsidizing them, there's got to be a strategy put in place that defines how we're going to get them to a point where they can operate effectively on their own. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Christian? I'm sorry.
Ralph Westbay, 1706 Powhatan. In the budget, I had requested a couple of weeks ago the detailed budget by line item as it was put together for 18, but was told it wasn't available. And so it makes it difficult to make the comparison meaningful at the detail level. You have columns up there that show your budgets, but there's no comparison to the adopted budget for the current year. Not the amended budget that you're dealing with now, but the original adopted budget. It would be nicer to see where you were and what this budget does and how much of a change it is compared to the budget that didn't work. We know the amended budget has been amended and you're living with it at this point in time. But the numbers that are comparing, and a good example of that is right now it's showing that your schools are level funded at the $8 million appropriation. But the reality is your adopted budget for 17 had $11 million in there. So you're looking at a 29% reduction, but that doesn't show in this document that way. So it would be better if you had a document that showed a dollar variance and a percentage variance by each of your major categories and functional areas within the budget, so general government in total. I put it together as best I could. I'll leave a copy with your clerk so you can get copies of it and take a look at it for what it's worth. But for instance, we're looking at a 62% increase compared to the adopted 17 budget for the city manager's office. You're looking at a 43% increase in the city attorney's office, 84% increase in personnel, 33% increase in the city treasurer's office, 65% increase in the finance department. And then you've got reductions of other areas. And so judicial, the public safety area, 27% increase in emergency communications, 25% in the fire department, and so on. 17% overall, for 13% overall for public safety. Some of the functions have been changed by name. It was difficult to know what the old term was versus the new. I was also told that there's a change, you're revamping the chart of accounts. I'm not sure why I'd spend time doing that at this point in time. The better focus is to focus on what needs to be done for the sustainability for the long term of this city. And I'll echo the statements of the previous person that I just am mind-boggled why you haven't begun a long time ago an earnest search for your city manager, the new city manager, so you can get somebody competent with a vested interest in the city to hire their own competent people. And the problem here is adhering to the proper processes and people doing their jobs competently. That's what got you into this trouble to begin with. That needs to be the focus. There's no other magic bullets. And so then the question is, does this budget give you a sustainable approach for the long-term solution? You're relying right now on a one-time $6 million liquidity event to get, and that's addressing, eliminating the need for borrowing money annually from the bank, the RAND, the Revenue Anticipation Note. That wasn't the problem. The problem was not living within your budget. And so where is this budget amending everything? So in the end, you're increasing all these big increases in all the departments, but you're cutting the schools $3 million, 29%. There wasn't any room in all of these increases for restoring any of the cut back to the schools. That doesn't make sense to me. But thank you for your time.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Linwood Christian. I reside at 14 Mistletoe Street here in the city of Petersburg. One of the things that I have always and shall continue to be an advocate of is our city school system. And one of the reasons, part of, as Mr. Westbay had said, we're cutting education. I cannot seem to understand, even on federal level, you'll leave everything else in place, but you'll cut education, then you complain about public schools. Well, I'm gonna tell you, this public school system here in Petersburg at one time was the top school system in the state. Now we are a joke. City council, you all have hired people. You hired the former mayor of Richmond's administrator to come here after the mess he made in Richmond and all of that controversy. You're paying him. You're paying for people to have, for monies for offices that should be in City Hall that they're not even sitting their behinds in the desk. We've extended the Bob contract. What I'm saying is, because so much has been allowed to go unchecked, I look at the time how you all jumped on current treasurer, Kevin Brown, about bringing all of these reports in when we've been asking you all to bring reports even when Rosalind Dance was mayor. But you haven't done it. I am tired of seeing these black kids in Petersburg get a second level education. They are not second class citizens. I'm tired of our students in Petersburg, people saying, oh, you all may have graduated them, but you didn't educate them.
They're jumping on school board, but they don't realize that you all are the ones who feeds that child known as the school system. And you've shown you can't take care of your children. Number two, merging recreation with some of these other departments, it's very troubling. Because again, you're outsourcing. Our black kids in this city get overlooked time and time and time and time again. And what do you all do? Sit in closed sessions for 2 hours while we sit out here and then you look at us because we complain. Enough is enough. Get your financial house in order. Take care of your children. Be in your school system. And this outsourcing thing, well, you all have already outsourced our government because the Bob Group does that. And we do need a city manager because one of the things I specifically remember, we were supposed to have a city manager or something by now. A permanent city manager, and we don't have that. Oh, and by the way, then we're paying for officials or whomever to get in the paper or be quoted making a statement asking who's hanging, but then they say we'd rather not be hanging, at least we're not hanging from a tree. This is what we're paying for. But we can't give money to our students. And if that's going to be the case, I think, again, there's time to be a new election. Thank you.
Ms. Brown, and then Mr. Flock.
Good evening, Gloria Brown, 1557 South Sycamore Street. Good evening, everyone. On a bit more of a positive note, I know there's a lot of concerns, but I just want to take the time to say thank you for reconsidering and restructuring the plan for Parks and Recreation. I've shared it before, and that is very personal to me because Parks and Recreation has helped me as a parent help parent my children. And I just saw disaster because if you cut, it's like Mr. Christian said and Mr. Westbay said, we're getting underfunded. I've been up here several times over the last decade fighting for the school system and its dollars and its level funding and and 42% in other districts. Yes, we already know where our kids are getting the short end of the stick. But I really want to take the time to thank you and thank who came to the table and decided that in the split of our children to keep Parks and Rec in the way it is now and not combine it, because what Ms. Yerby has continued to take on and her staff in such, and everyone knows I am a stickler, in such a professional manner at all times, being entrusted with over 500 of our city children every year. And then when they're getting to a point when they cannot be taken care of anymore or have activities, then Ms. Yerby finds opportunity to employ them and start to prepare them for life. So I just want to say to you, thank you very much for reconsidering that and restructuring it, because to be quite honest, I didn't want any of those kids that wouldn't be able to get in to Park and Rec getting into my house. That's for real, okay? So the other thing, while I have a slither of time, little concern. In IMCA, y'all probably know what that is. I've looked on that website, and I think I'm a member. There are postings all over the country for different government positions, and I think I spoke to a couple of council people. I have not seen any of the positions that we're looking for on that nationwide website. So, yeah, so that was just a concern to me. If someone could address it at a later date. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Ron Flock, 1708 Pender Avenue. I look at this budget and I think of all these budget work sessions you all have had, and I got to ask myself, how many times has it been brought to your attention that we have to develop this budget not based on the way we did, because our numbers were never right. We have to now balance on the more factual numbers. And then we come in here and we are presented with a budget that has fairy dust, a $6 million liquidity event, a fairy dust that is going to just magically appear in 2018. Now, either it's fairy dust or our infrastructure has already been sold. And if that's the case, you all need to step up and get this right. You can't use that $6 million in the budget. You don't know where it's coming from. I know where you assume it's coming from, and that's the word you use, assume. Use real numbers. I did.
Anyone speak? Mike Edwards, then Mr. Is this the public speaking? No, this is not a public hearing. Mr. Edwards.
What is this?
Public hearing on the budget.
Good evening. Michael Edwards, 409 Grove Avenue. Well, I can't say I can speak on the whole budget because I've never seen us do a public hearing and still have work sessions scheduled. So I really can't comment on what I wanted to comment on, but nevertheless, I'm going to comment on page 63 of the budget, the city manager's office. Total combined between the personnel and non-personnel costs, $903,649. That is what is proposed for FY18. For full-time salaries, it's $517,500. On page 154 in the appendices, as far as the full-time positions by department, we have under the city manager's budget, 1 city manager, 2 assistant city managers. For a city our size, please explain to me why we need 2 city managers, 2 assistant city managers, 1 executive assistant to the city manager for a total of 4 employees within the department. I have to stand here and look at this $517,500. What on earth are these people making per year in this office? I've questioned this, I've looked through this. You know, these are not realistic numbers in a city our size. I've even talked with the mayor about this. 2 assistant city managers. I've even heard rumors that the new city manager is going to come in the door at $179,000. Wow. Johnson left at $175,000. Nevertheless, these are outrageous numbers, and I hope somebody can provide some clarity on this. And also, I would like to address one more thing before my time is up. It's to my understanding that the 10% has been restored to our public safety employees. I have talked to many of them, and they are grateful that you all took the step to make that happen. I do want to be under the understanding that no other city employee outside of those departments will not see their 10% restored until the new budget is adopted and takes effect July 1, because based on the amended Second Amendment of FY17, We just do not have the funds to restore 10% to other employees. So when the public comment section closes, I would like an answer for that if possible. Thank you.
Any more speakers? Seeing no further hands, the public hearing is closed.